Hey guys, today we are going to look at our last day of factoring. Now some of you might say, wait, there's 2 sections left. You're right. 8.8 usually we break into 2 days and do. We are not going to do the second day of 8.8. It's a different type of factoring with the 3 and 1s. We're not going to worry about those. You'll get those once you get to Algebra 2. Okay, so grouping is used whenever we have 4 terms. Now we're going to be looking at 4 terms. We've only done 2 and 3 up to this point. And the only type of grouping we're doing is the 2 and 2. So you're always going to group the first 2 together and the second 2 together. And really it just comes down to GCF. We're going to do the GCF about 3 different times when we're working with this. But it's all going to be GCF based. Again, we are not going to be doing the 3 and 1s. So 8.8 day 2 we are not doing. Okay, what we're going to do instead is give you an extra day just to practice factoring. We find it to be much more important that you guys have down the methods that we've been teaching you rather than giving you one more method. Okay, so we just feel that would be in your guys' best interest. Okay, so first one we've got here, we'll go ahead and look at our grouping. We have 3x cubed plus 14x squared plus 20x plus 35. Okay, so like I said, you're always going to look for a GCF right off the get-go. Okay, look for a GCF with all 4 terms. You do not have one, so if you don't, we're going to group 2 and 2. And then we're going to look for GCFs in just those groups. Okay, so if I look at the first group, I have a GCF. Okay, 2 goes into both of these, and x squared goes into both of these. So that means I'm going to take a 2x squared out of just the first group. Okay, so I'll be left with 4x plus 7. Remember, divide those out. So then I look at the second group. The second group I look for a GCF. I have a GCF of 5 in my second group. Okay, so I'm going to take a 5 out. If I divide each of these by 5, I'm left with 4x plus 7. Hey, look at that. You have the same thing in the parentheses, and you should. If you don't, then you did not find the correct GCF. Okay, so you do have to look for that. Okay, so then to get our final answer, we're going to take what's the same, but we only take one of them. Okay, so even though they're the same, I just take one of them. And then I'm going to combine the GCFs in the second set of parentheses. So if you were to multiply, distribute that out, you would end up with your original problem. Okay, so again, it's just GCF, GCF, GCF. That's really all you are doing with these ones when you group it 2 and 2. Okay, B is going to be the same idea, but this one we're also going to have a GCF in all 4 terms. So I kind of want you to see what it looks like what if I have one with all of the terms. You won't have these that often, but you can run into them every now and then. So for this one, you want to ask yourself, do I have an overall GCF? And you do. Okay, if you look at all of your numbers, 3 goes into them, and also an H, because there is an H with everything as well. Okay, so that means I need to take a 3H out to the beginning. Okay, and I'm actually going to use braces here instead of parentheses because I'm going to have to do parentheses inside of it. So if I divide everything by a 3H, I'll have a 2H to the third. I'll have a 3H squared. I'll have a 4H, and I'll have a 6. Okay, so again, that was just looking at an overall GCF before we even started grouping. Okay, now I still have 4 terms, so now I'm going to group the first 2 and the second 2. Still keeping the 3H out here. Okay, I can't lose that. That's going to be part of my final answer. So now I just look at the first group and say, what's my GCF? Well, there isn't one with the numbers, but there is an H squared. Okay, so if I divide by H squared, I'm left with 2H plus 3. Look for a GCF here. It's going to be 2. So I'll have a 2H plus 3. And that's, again, exactly what we need. We have to have the same thing in parentheses. Okay, if we don't, then we did something incorrect. Okay, so this 3h out here, that's just going to stay out there. Whatever is the same, we're going to take. And then we'll combine the h squared and the 2 together. So that would be our final answer after working with all the GCFs. Okay, again, just lots and lots of GCFs here with these problems. All right, let's go ahead and look at another one here. So we have 20r squared, or to the third, excuse me, plus 8r squared plus 5r plus 2. Okay, so look for an overall GCF. We do not have one here, so we're going to go ahead and group 2 and 2. Okay, so look for the GCF in each group. If you look at the first group, you have a GCF of 4r squared. So if I pull that out, I have a 5r plus 2. Now, if you look at the next group, you're probably thinking, I don't have a GCF. You're correct, but you do have to have something to put in that other parenthesis. So what we technically pull out that doesn't change anything is a 1. Okay, so if you look at it and say there is not a GCF, you're right, but you do need to take a 1 out, otherwise you won't have anything to combine in the parenthesis with the 4r squared. Okay, so last but not least then, the one that's the same will be one of our parentheses, and then the GCFs will be our other parenthesis. Again, that's why we need it, otherwise you wouldn't have anything to combine with the 4r squared. All right, good. All right, so one other little thing then, you'll notice that all of our signs up to this point have been positive. Okay, well, we need to talk about what happens if I have a negative. Okay, specifically if a negative is the middle sign. Okay, so that's what we're going to look at with the next two. It just changes one thing, and that's it. The rest of it will stay the same. Okay, so if this middle one right here, where you're going to split your groups, happens to be negative, you have to make sure you put that negative in the parentheses. Okay, it can't be left on the outside because it is changing the problem if you do that. Okay, now we're still going to go about the same way looking for GCFs. Okay, so if I look at the first one, I would have a GCF of 3d squared. So if I divide that out, I'd be left with 2d plus 1. Now here's where the difference comes in. Notice how the sign here is a positive, but not here, they're negatives. When you take out that GCF, you have to take the negative out with it. Okay, so if this term is negative, then that means your GCF will also be negative. Okay, so I can take a negative 5 out. And if I divide by negative 5, it changes both of those to positives, which is exactly what I want, so it matches up with the other set of parentheses. Okay, so then I would take my 2d plus 1, and I'd have my 3d squared minus 5. Everything else stays the same, it's just that means you're pulling out a negative GCF for that second one. All right, let's go ahead and do that one more time here just to make sure we understand that. So for E, we have 6x to the third minus 2x squared minus 12x plus 4. Okay, so again, you look for an overall GCF. You actually do have one here. Okay, so you want to make sure you take that out first. You have a 2. Okay, so I'm going to take out a 2. Okay, after that we can go ahead and group. Again, making sure that negative has to go in that set of parentheses. Okay, I have a GCF of x squared here. I have a GCF of -2 here. Again, we'll change both of the signs, which then does make these match up with each other the way that they need to. Okay, so then I would be left with the 2. I'd still have the 3x minus 1, and then I would combine the GCFs to get my final answer. All right. So again, that is grouping 2 and 2. Okay, so again, that's the only 4 term that we are going to do. Okay, we are not going to do 8.82, day 2, okay? And then one more here we're going to look at with example 2 is just making sure we don't forget our 3 term, okay? You'll notice it says a rectangular prism has a volume of 60x cubed plus 34x squared plus 4x. And it says, what expression can represent the dimensions of the prism? Use factoring. We're just factoring. Okay, don't let all the words and stuff confuse you. Now you'll notice this is 3 terms, so this goes back to what we've been doing the past few days. Okay, not what we did today. Very important you recognize how many terms you have because it's going to tell you how to factor. Okay, so we got to make sure we do keep track of that. You'll notice you do have a GCF here, which is 2x. So I'll end up with 30x squared plus 17x plus 2. Okay, since it's 3 term, we're going to go back to our parentheses. Okay, both of these are positive, so both of these are positive. 2 is prime, so we'll have 2 and 1. So we need factors of 30. We got 1 and 30, 2 and 15, 3 and 10, 5 and 6. So you have quite a few that you can choose from here, okay, but you need to find the right combination that will again give us the 17 in the middle. Okay, if you end up choosing your 5x and your 6x, it will work out for you. You'll get 12x, 5x, that does equal 17x in the middle, so those would be the correct dimensions. Again, it's just kind of a fancy way of telling you to factor when you're working with those. All right? So, again, I hope you have a great rest of your day and hope to see you guys soon.